Welcome, everybody, to the Omniverse Comics Guide podcast. I'm so happy to say that we have, for the first time on any podcast, someone from Cybertron. I'm sure Dave wishes he was here, but we've got none other than Optimus Prime for our special Comics to Chill to this Halloween. How are you, Optimus?
You're right, mate. I'm Optimus Prime. How are you doing?
Your choice of accents, because I know you could do some pretty good voices and impressions, but
Who? Optimus Prime? No, I can do a good impression of a truck, mate.
where did Optimus Prime pick up that accent? Optimus?
From Newcastle.
How's it going, buddy? You look great in any outfit you're wearing.
Oh, shucks. Thanks, dude. So do you. Look at you. Hang on a minute. Hang on. This is our Halloween episode.
Yeah.
Have you forgotten?
Forgotten what?
Am I the only bellend dressed up here?
You're the bellend in the bollocks right now.
Oh, that's not fair, dude.
Are you gonna wear? You can't wear the mask the whole time.
No, I won't be able to now because I'm deafening myself.
Yeah, you won't be able to do that. But
No.
I love the commitment.
Thank you.
Sorry, dude. I mean, I didn't know that we were.
You seriously not going to dress up? That's harsh, man.
Will you guys forgive me if I don't dress up? I don't celebrate Halloween. I'm 40 years old.
I'm 48, dude. And I'm dressed as Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime.
All right, okay, let me see. Can you guys
whip
give me
something
a...
up?
Be right back. How's that? Do I know how to prepare for a party or what? Faster than a speeding bullet, my friend. Put my headphones back on, even though I look like a dorky Superman wearing headphones. There you go.
Yes!
And just for the record, I didn't grab a towel from the linen closet. This is official. I got the S in the back.
Where'd you get that from?
Got it as an anniversary gift.
Are you
Not
serious?
from my wife.
Not from your
Not
wife.
from my
I was going to
wife.
say, was that from your wife? Is it normally just the cape you wear?
Cosplay, dress up. No. It was like a surprise party. So they had us dress up for the evening because they know that we like Superman and Batman. So they got us like outfits and stuff like that. So I had to wear this the whole party, which I wasn't upset about. I've always wanted a Superman cape, but when else am I going to wear this thing other than on our podcast?
This is true. This is true.
But I mean, if I get to a point in life where I'm confident enough, I might just go out there with a cape. Like, why not?
Just the cape?
Not just the cape, but like wearing my cape.
I think you should do it, dude. It was hot under there.
Thank you for joining us. If you're here for the first time, I hope you have a good time. It should be a good time. We came dressed to impress, right? But of course, omniversecomics.guide is where it's at. Come and visit the website and check us out. And come visit us every week for our podcasts that are so wonderfully edited by my pal Dave. I mean, Optimus.
Dave Prime.
Dave Prime. I like that. All right. Were you looking forward to prepping for the episode, like thinking of things to read in the genre?
Well, it's funny because like if you do stories for Halloween, it's if you kind of keep it that open rather than saying it's like horror, you can kind of do anything. So you can do villain-centric stuff, or you can do like really, really dark stories, or you know. So I think it kind of opens it up. You don't just have to go, it has to be horror related, and then have the whole
You're
debate.
right.
Is it like with Die Hard? Is it an action? Is it a Christmas film? No, it's an action film. Like it can be both.
Yeah, and as I was going through, like, I don't read enough horror. I don't have horror. I'm just like, wait a second. There's a lot of things that are well-known stories that perfectly fit, and some of them I leave out on purpose because they're just so obvious. Like Halloween is in the title, you know. It's like, of course, and you wanna list them at some point in time, but
Yeah.
the fun part is like kind of digging through and being like, that works. That's a great story to pick, and for people to, you know, maybe almost like a secret, like a hidden gem type of deal, you know? Yeah, that's what these episodes are fun for.
We'll also be applying this theme to the website for a while. So all the reading orders for events and for characters are going to be in that similar vein. Like
Cool.
Nice and open, bad guys, monsters, dark shiz happening.
I love it. All right. Shall we begin?
I think we should. I'm not going to start with this, but a thank you to this could have been entered, to BC Scrubs for sending me this issue that I referenced in an episode,
cool.
which was the Neil Adams cover on World's Finest 258. Yep, 258. And it's one where Batman gets turned into a kind of man-bat. I don't know if this is pre-man-bat. It might be. But he's turned into like a Kryptonian vampire thing.
That's very cool.
Bat thing.
It's a great cover.
So surreal. Love it. 1979. Yeah, I think it's after Man-Bat. I'm not sure. But anyway, but yes, that was really sweet. So thank you. And I did consider including it, but I already had a list. And it opens with a Batman story. Which
Nice.
So this is Gotham by Gaslight. I've got the deluxe edition here, but you can get it on its own. There's also an animated version of this. And
Never read it.
Really? I just assumed you would have done.
No, I think I watched the animated movie, but yeah, I haven't read it. No. Tell me about it.
Well, it's the first Elseworld story, officially.
That's
I think.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's written by Brian Augustine, the art's by Mike Mignola, very, very early. So it's not quite that kind of Hellboy style yet. It's not quite... It's moved on from his Rocket Raccoon stuff, so it's somewhere in the middle. So he wasn't going to work on the project, apparently. He was walking past the offices and someone called him in. And they were going, this is the story we're talking about. Can you do it? He's going, I've got too much on my plate. I've got too much to do. And they went, yeah, but, you know, can you do it? And he's coming up with all these ideas. And then he basically went, I'm doing this, aren't I? It's about a 50-page story. It recreates the origin of Bruce Wayne, but in the late 1800s. And it involves Jack the Ripper. So it's kind of a Victorian era version of Batman. So he has his travels in Europe and through London, and while he's in London, the Ripper's there. So when he comes back and the Ripper travels over to Gotham, people start to wonder if Bruce Wayne might be the Ripper. And it's very hard to cover for your secret life as Batman by going, no, I just have normal things to do at night where I'm not home an awful lot. So like it takes a surprise turn, which I hope I haven't totally spoiled, but it's a fun book. The art's great, of course, because it's Mignola. It feels like quite an abrupt ending because it's kind of got that bookshelf format, page limitation. I think they could have probably extended it a little bit, but it's a minor complaint. And it's not really even a complaint. It wraps and you're going like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
it is
book.
jarring when a story can end abruptly, but then there's times where it's like that was the point. Like it was to make you go, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it just cuts.
I feel you.
And yeah, that does, like you said, that does work and it does catch you off guard. There are follow-ups. Master of the Future was another one-shot, but it's not in the horror vein. It's more of that's more steampunky adventure. But he's in a few other stories after that, including some stuff in Countdown Presents, Search for Ray Palmer, Shazam issues of Convergence, stuff like that. You don't need to read all that. This stands well enough on its own. And like I say, it launched Elseworlds, the kind of what if of DC. But yeah, it's a fun one. I do recommend it. It's a nice little read. And I wanted to kick us off with something a bit more familiar.
I got some familiar to start as well. I didn't list this in the recent New 52 episode we did because I figured I could use it for this episode. And it's quite an obvious one, but for the season, I mean, nothing will make you feel quite like October, but it's the Court of Owls. The first 12 issues of that run, it definitely left an impact within the Batman lore. You can see a lot of people jumping on to reading comics sometimes because they heard of this Court of Owls story that's really strong, really good. It's been included in animated features, but it does have every form of creepy to it. You've got the motifs of the bats and the owls and the nighttime and these secret societies, and you don't know who's a secret agent. And then what Batman ends up going through within the story, it's the one time where you feel like he's met his match. But it's been this like hidden underground Gotham lore that is all the stuff of legends that all happens to be true. And to see the toll it takes on him, I mean, that's really what makes great superhero stories.
Yeah.
Or things that make you scared is when you really feel like, yeah, they always get close to death, but like this time around, I feel like
it's consistently high level threat. And it's probably on a par as well that it feels like he can't beat. Because they're more powerful than he is. Not in a superpowered way, but their control is greater than over the city.
Yeah, and he's just one. The whole lore of the Court of Owls within the New 52 Bat family stories, there's a lot of interweaving. Everyone's affected by it. It's pretty easy to get into if you're new to Batman. If you want to start somewhere, it is a good place to start. But for the season, I feel like you'll definitely get into that book and feel like it's, the season. And Greg Capullo's artwork, I think, really needs to be, for me, I feel like that's the strong part of this run. Scott Snyder's got great plots, great stories, great storytelling elements with even the way some of the issues are. There's one issue where you've got to read it. You got to engage with the comic book while you read it.
Right.
Because the way the paneling is done. It's very interactive at the same time. Do you remember that?
No, I haven't read it since like 2012. No, 2014, I think I read it. 2014. Okay. So it's been a while.
Yeah. You get to one issue where you've got to read it kind of like turning it around. Yeah, so it's got that also that reader engagement thing to it. You don't got to get the omnibus if that's a big commitment. It's a great omni for Batman fans, but if you just want to read a good Halloween story.
No, that's a good one because the as well as is a crossover, isn't it? But you also don't need to read all the tie-ins. You can just read the Batman series, and I think there's an annual maybe, but that's normally in whatever collected edition you get. So if you just get Batman Court of Owls or that omni, you'll get all the story you need.
I will say that the Kyle Higgins Nightwing tie-in with the Court of Owls, what I liked about it was you weren't sure if it had more of a lasting effect on Dick Grayson, whole thing, than it would on Bruce. You know, Bruce, like Batman is the umbrella, but in a way you're almost like, this is really a Dick Grayson issue.
Well, that was still felt into Joker War, which was only a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So the fallout of that for Dick Grayson is way bigger, you're right. Nice choice, man. Okay.
Thank you.
Shall I go with my second?
You shall.
I am going to slightly excuse myself to a point. When I read it, I was reading an event called Infestation 2, which was from IDW, which was a Elder Gods kind of Cthulhu mythos, H.P. Lovecraft themed event. So the first Infestation from IDW was a kind of interdimensional zombies jumping into Transformers, Ghostbusters, G.I. Joe comics, all these different universes that were under IDW at the time. Infestation 2 jumps it along a little further to what they then had control of franchise-wise. So it included Transformers G.I. Joe again, but also had 30 Days of Night, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Dungeons & Dragons. So this is a two-part story, which is Infestation 2, Dungeons & Dragons. It's 2 issues. It's about Abraxas Wren of Eberron. It's one of the better known, more legendary characters from Dungeons and Dragons, and he's a detective character. I don't know a massive amount about this stuff. I'm not into the D&D mythology, but this was the comic that sold me on Dungeons and Dragons comics from IDW, just because it was just such a fun read. And when I read it again, I read those 2 issues again recently, and I did admittedly kind of go, this wasn't maybe quite as outstanding as I thought, and I think it's because compared to a lot of the other tie-ins, it's considerably better. It's just a fun book, and because it involves the Elder Gods, which then kind of, that whole mythos of the dark ones, the many-angled ones, all the different names those characters have got. Like, you see them in the Cancerverse in at the end of the best cosmic era, potentially, from Marvel. So that kind of mythos is used a lot in different media, and it touches upon that, but it has them interacting with all these different characters. But in this one, it's that they're unleashed on a city, and it's down to one detective. I don't know if he's an elf or what he is. I don't know. He's got pointy ears, so maybe he's an elf. Someone can slap me around the head for not knowing my shit. But he's got to figure out how to get rid of this massive elder god that's towering over one of the finest looking cities in whatever realm it is. I think the best part of it is it's not just a detective story. It's not just that they've got to figure out this impossible solution to this impossible problem, but it's also quite funny because the character is a proper knob, and he's so unaware of himself, and he's quite nasty. But to his friend, I don't know if he's like his sidekick or his assistant or what he's supposed to be, but he's horrible to him all the way through. And it's just their interaction between the two of them. And because it's got big monsters in it, it's perfect for your Halloween times.
Awesome. I like it. There you go. Dave hits us with a little something off the beaten path. Okay, I'm going to step out of the DC universe, and I'm going to go with Marvel universe. Across the street. I'm not sure. I feel like we've spoken about this a few times, this storyline. I checked if it was in our X-Men 90s, and I don't think this was published in the 90s, so I'm going to use it again. If it's a repeat, I apologize, but once I pick it, you're going to be like, of course. I'm going to go with X-Men
Yeah.
Inferno.
Oh my god.
There's goblins everywhere. The mailboxes turn into monsters. Every part of the Marvel universe is affected by the Goblin Queen and Mr. Sinister. It is a wacky, wild, serious ride all at once. You've got these corny, campy tie-ins with the kids. What are they called? The
The
Exterminators,
Exterminators, yeah.
that play a vital role in this story, and you're wondering, why am I reading this 4-part whatever it was miniseries? And then all of a sudden you really like the kids. I did anyways. As I got to like later I'm like, they're important. Like that's why I had to read it. It's an important part of the story. But it is also it's pretty creepy. It's pretty, if it was when they did it in the animated X-Men 97, they adapted this storyline.
Oh, I didn't watch it.
It was pretty well done, considering that it has to make a bunch of things work,
Yeah.
right? They did a pretty decent job of adapting it, I would say. But it's properly scary, I would say, as a comic book, X-Men line. Little corny, but it's for the season, man.
Wow.
It is the right time to read it.
Isn't it just? I'll tell you what, I haven't read it in about 25 years. I want to get some of the bigger events on the website, but to do that, I have to reread Inferno, and I am desperate to reread Inferno. Like, I really, really want to reread that story, because it's just so bizarre. Like, even the tie-ins, because, I mean, well, as a Halloween story, if you just read the X-Men stuff, it's great. You've got Havoc's very dubious penis covering costume. Just that Dave isn't dressed as the Goblin Queen. That's the thing, right? Because Havoc virtually dresses as the Goblin Queen as well. So he's got that kind of flap dress that covers his
You
winky
got
and
a
balls.
good memory for something you haven't read for so
It
long, man.
stuck with me. That it's like, really, you're gonna get away with that on that dude? But they do it. Madeline's costume, even though, you know, it's kind of torn and ripped and stuff, whenever she wears that costume, it's always in the same condition, because it's just like, it became really iconic because it makes no sense.
None of the costumes that the girls wore back then made sense.
No.
And they were just
Why are
for
they
young
wearing
boys.
heels?
Yeah. But it's a pretty consequential story in the lore of X-Men as well. This was basically a company crossover in a lot of ways, and that's what this omnibus has. It has the full X-Men stuff and the New Mutants and the X-Fact, like all the X books are here, but then it has the Avengers and the
it has
Power
that
Pack
one.
and the Spider-Man and all the other offices that were tied into it. Even when you read it in Spider-Man, it affected the storyline.
It affected one of his biggest villains. They'd introduce a new Hobgoblin to replace the old one after the big mystery,
Yeah.
and it was done very rapidly, and there's a whole story behind that. But the new Hobgoblin they introduced was kind of a bit crap, and this was the story that elevates him into a threat.
Right.
In a very literal way.
Right. Yes. So I was thinking, I'm like, what's something that's kind of obvious that I should list that's perfect for the event and for tonight's episode? And Inferno just checks off all the boxes.
It's obvious, but not. I think because of its age, and because a lot of people have heard of it and not read it. So
And the
go in
and
with
the
an
cool
open
thing
mind.
is, you don't got to get the omnibus to read this. There's different formats now that you can find this in, and I think they have those X-Men milestones. I don't know if they're still in
Yeah.
print. That's how I first read it,
Uh-huh.
and it was a pretty concise
Yeah.
collection. You didn't get all the tie-ins, but you got what you needed to know what happened in the X world, and I thought it was a really great way to step into a storyline that was very expansive, but once you read that milestone version, it was a lot of fun, man.
Yeah. Silliness.
And silly,
But
but you
it's so
see a
much fun.
lot of important things happen to the X. That's the other thing too.
Another one with big fallout.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, X-Men Inferno, oldie but a goodie.
It is. It's a beaut. Thank you for choosing it, because you've made me want to go back and read it again. Okay, we're going to stay in the Marvel Universe at least one more time.
Okay.
I've picked one of my favourite early 90s comics, and it's just one issue. It's Ghost Rider number 7. That is one of my favourite covers ever. It's Mark Texeira. It's Ghost Rider holding Barbara Ketch and the Scarecrow leaping at him. So Marvel have got their own Scarecrow. He's a very different character to the DC Scarecrow. He's terrifying, but he doesn't like induce fear with gases and stuff and prey on that. He's just a scary guy and a kind of contortionist and escape artist. And he seems to have some control over birds, over crows. And he's creepy, man. And that story made me really like that character.
No, I was going to say, I remember reading him, I think, in a Captain America story.
Wow.
And I was wondering, I'm like, is there some sort of copyright thing that there's almost, but then I saw like this guy's got his own tactics of fear that are equally just as disturbing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
Go ahead.
not at all. He's actually Marvel's second Scarecrow, at least. So he used to have a horror-themed Scarecrow. Do you know what? I might even do a reading order of him for Halloween. We'll see.
Of course you will.
Why not? Hey, why not? But yeah, this one is very much a villain. He's psychotic. He's murderous. And this does follow on directly from that Captain America story, essentially. It's his prison break and his attempt to draw Captain America out, but instead he draws the attention of Ghost Rider. But because he draws Ghost Rider's attention, something pretty bad happens in Dan Ketch's life, and he's not there for it. So this was probably the first 10, 20, 25 issues, I think, were the strongest for the Dan Ketch era of Ghost Rider. So Danny Ketch. It's some great stuff. That issue is just so dark and nasty. It's a key moment in Danny Ketch's life. And it's one of those moments as well that's pivotal for Ghost Rider trying to figure out what the point of his existence is. You know, as he's questioning himself through this story. But it's just the whole vibe of the issue is very creepy because Scarecrow's not the only bad guy in the issue.
I've heard really good things about that run.
It's great.
Just
First 25 issues.
Howard Mackey's
Great. Then it's not bad, but it's not as strong. It kind of had a really nice build-up, and I think they wanted to launch more of a line from it, and then that kind of dragged out the mystery of what Ghost Rider is to the point where it wasn't really fully revealed until the Jason Aaron run in the kind of early 2000s. That year, they launched so many books in 1990, like New Warriors. They launched a new Spider-Man series, which had its ups and downs. New Warriors was fantastic. You know, Ghost Rider was really good fun. Really nice and dark.
Yeah.
There was some great books.
Yeah, there was some fun stuff.
You got the touch.
So, new to the Omniverse, we have the X-Men Family Reading Order, which is part 2 of the All New, All Different era. Ghost Rider, 1990 to 1993, Danny Ketch. Events and crossovers.
Nice segue. Very good.
G.I. Joe and versus the Transformers from 1987, so that was when the two titles were with Marvel, and a very, very strange event that was. Fall of the Hammer, which was the first official 5-part crossover from the 2099 books, and The Legend Returns, which is Don't Read It, which is a Rob Liefeld thing. It's really, keep an open mind. It's don't do it to yourself. From DC, we've got The Great Darkness Saga, which is from 1982. From 1996, we've got Legacy, which was the Batman crossover that includes Ra's al Ghul, Ra's al Ghul. City of Bane, 2019 to 2020, which was the end of the Tom King run. And Road to Dark Crisis from 2022. So really jumping through time. Podcast and video, we've got the Valiant Universe Starter Kit. And then incoming October 2024 collected editions as well. So you can see what's coming out in the month of the Halloweens. Now, I just wanted to say on here, for subscribers, if you missed the subscriber exclusive in September, that was because I didn't manage to get to it in time, but I'm going to add 2 in October, so you're not going to miss out. There will be 2 exclusive entries in October.
I like it.
Are we done? I can...
Anything else? Yeah.
Oh, I have to stay.
Thing?
No, I'm gonna power
you
through.
Can get out of it. I can take the tape off.
I'm boiling.
It's choking me. Take it off.
All right.
Okay. My number 3 pick. Recently read this omnibus, thinking that I would get a story for specifically this episode, but I just ended up picking 1 issue. And it's Gotham Central, issue number 32. It's called Nature. It's by Greg Rucka.
Not yet.
Steve Lieber is the art son.
Oh,
Fantastic. Gotham Central is what I was hoping the Gotham TV show would be more like.
Yeah.
But it does like the back in time version of Bruce being kid and whatever.
Oh, yeah, it did, didn't it?
This is cool because it takes place in modern DC. It's a storyline that carries on into the New 52. So where this ends, Renee Montoya's storyline continues in New 52. So it's a pretty important part of like some of these characters' arcs, but it follows the precinct, right? Gotham Central. It follows these detectives. They all have their kind of story arc, things that they affect within it, who the corrupt cops are, et cetera, et cetera. But in this one story, it follows these two cops that are beat cops, but they got their hands in all these different types of pots, and they're crooked, for lack of a better term. And as you read through the issue, and you just see what a bunch of assholes these guys are. Like, I don't know where this story's going, but I hope to get their comeuppance. It's satisfying, but it's a terrifying end.
Oh.
Because they come in contact with a particular Batman villain. I'm not going to give it away because it's quick.
Right.
The whole story, the issue is not about that villain. They just show up and take care of these cops in a way that's just like, oh my God, what an end to that day. It's more adult in nature because, again, these cops, while they're on the beat for the day, they're covering up a murder. They're, got their hands in this pot, that pot. They go to see a couple of prostitutes, et cetera, et cetera. And it's the dialogue, right? That's knowing what they did in that day. It doesn't really affect. It's just more the dialogue, who these guys are, how they interact with the city. Man, it would be nice for those guys to get their asses kicked. I was just reading a comment from Omega Bread that I didn't pay attention to. I'm sorry. Before you get into your pick, he brought to my attention, or the attention of the chat, that Rucka and Brubaker shared duties. One guy did each one writing the respective beat, one on the day shift, one on the night shift. I never paid attention to that. That's really cool.
I forgot. For my number 4, we're going to head into the Mignolaverse or the Hellboy universe, whatever you like. This is from Sir Edward Grey, Witchfinder. I'd always thought the title was a little bit... What? Because you go like Witch Hunter. You're like, okay, he hunts witches. Right. It sounds a bit more aggressive. There's witch... He finds them. It's like ultimate occult hide and seek. Found you. And what is it, his turn? How does this work? But it's not. He is referred to as Witchfinder because of an incident that happens right in the very first story that you read. There are a number of stories in this book, but the one particular one that I loved, I just fell in love with it completely. It's written by Kim Newman, who I think has written a lot of horror stuff, but he also used to do horror reviews in some of the magazines I used to read, like film magazines. The art is by Tyler Crook, and it's great. It's just this... The Witchfinder is called into this town, and there's some mysterious goings on. And he interacts with the constabulary there, and he's trying to figure out what is the strange mystery of this town. And it's all this thing about this obsession with eels. And you think, how is this going to be even remotely scary? I think I mentioned a while ago that I was reading the Cullen Bunn series that I now can't think of the name of it, and the art was by Tyler Crook, and there was a jump scare in it. And I remember thinking, like, yeah, that doesn't work. Does it depend how fast you turn the page? Like, how does this work? There is a jump scare, and it's also drawn by Tyler Crook, and it's in this story. And when you turn the page, it made me go like, huh! So it works. It was really weird. But the atmosphere in this story is great. And even though initially, like, he's just fighting some eels, it gets weirder and darker, and what is going on in this strange little village. It's called Witchfinder, The Mysteries of Unland, and it's a 5-issue series. Tyler Crook, Kim Newman. It's great. It's my favourite series of this. Someone was asking on something recently, which is better as a spin-off, Lobster Johnson, Witchfinder, or Baltimore? Baltimore isn't a Hellboy spin-off. It's set in the Outerverse, so it's a separate continuity, a separate universe. But between Lobster Johnson and this one, I thought Lobster Johnson was going to win me over completely, but Witchfinder is brilliant. It's brilliant. There's one story I didn't really warm to because it was a Western and it felt like it didn't really fit. But the rest of it, I loved it. I love that kind of Victorian era Gothic horror, and there's vampires and stuff, and there's all sorts in there. But for some reason, The Mysteries of Unland with its weird fish vibe was the one that really, really stuck with me. But it's a perfectly creepy story for Halloween. If you did want to know how to read Hellboy in order, some crazy loon has done a 3-part Hellboy reading order on omniversecomics.guide.
You don't say.
Yeah,
what a weirdo.
What a freak.
I think last time we did this episode, I picked the first part of this storyline. So bear with me, I'm going to pick a part 2, but it isn't too much of a commitment to get into this. This is Deceased, Dead Planet. I read it recently in preparation for this, and it fits perfectly. I think, Dave, have you read Deceased?
No, but funnily enough, it hit my must-read list recently. I think they're doing an omnibus of the whole lot next year.
Yes. Tom Taylor, Trevor Hairsine, beautiful stuff. I love the art in both of the Deceased and the sequel here, Dead Planet. And essentially, this is a Elseworlds style story. Nobody's safe. It's almost in the same sort of vein of what he did with Injustice, where anything can happen. Don't get too connected to who you think is going to be the hero of the story. In this sequel, they're trying to figure out, through Cyborg, a cure for what the virus that's gone out there. And what's cool about it is a lot of the characters have grown up. Some of the mantles have been passed on. So you do have your Superman, your Batman, your usual suspects, but they're versions of ones that maybe you'd be surprised, which is always pleasant to, get a fresh take on something. And as well, I think the narrative is pretty much driven by John Constantine and Dr. Fate.
Oh, wow.
And some Swamp Thing. It's a proper horror story. Zombies and Justice League and new gods. Orion's here. Mr. Miracle's involved. It's quite fun. And Tom Taylor's, haven't really read anything from him that I haven't liked. Safe bet when you see Tom Taylor on the cover. And Deceased is definitely worth a read. It's a fun book, no matter what you're into. Check it out. Is it number 5 for you?
Yeah. Are you ready?
All right.
I'm
ready. Where are you taking us, Dave?
I'm taking us to AWA Town. In fact, specifically, I'm taking us to Grendel, Kentucky. This is a typical monster story. This is there's a creature in the mine, and there's a biker gang that are trying to figure out what this thing is. Sure, you've got all your horror tropes. You're not necessarily reading something that's vastly new. I guess that because you got a biker gang versus the monster, that's kind of quite a new vibe. It's written by Jeff McComsey, and this was the winner for me, illustrated by Tommy Lee Edwards. I love Tommy Lee Edwards' art. It's just very much its own thing. You know when you're reading a book drawn by Tommy Lee Edwards. This is lovely stuff. But it's only a 4-issue series. But I read the whole thing in about 35 minutes this afternoon. Because there's not a huge amount of dialogue. The pace is very quick. Yeah. So if you're poring over it, you're probably reading it wrong. I mean, by all means, pore over it because the artwork is beautiful. Like, it's great. Coloured by Giovanna Nero. The thing we often don't do with these is we like to find our kind of dark superhero stories and stuff. But for this one, this is your classic monster. Like, you got your monster film, the thing that lives in the thing, and now we're going to go and look for it. No, don't look for it. Just leave it. Just go. Just live somewhere else. Like, now we're going to go and look for it. Well, you're all going to die. So this is that. But it's a fun, ridiculous, nasty, dark, violent book. And I love monster design. I've got this real thing about the design of creatures. Like, I'll watch some of those films just to see how they create the creature, what it looks like, what it can do, all that kind of stuff. And I don't necessarily need to know how it became that or where is it from. I think what's nice is when you have a story like that where it doesn't explain stuff. Because why should you know? Why should you find out? It's so convenient because we don't always find out everything about everything in real life. And I think with this
that's the scary part of it.
Yeah,
the unknown.
Fear of the unknown, exactly. Without wishing to spoil anything in this book, they do retain that very well. I was waiting all the way through to kind of go like, okay, are we going to get something? Are we going to get some understanding? And I'm reading it. Do we get an understanding? Well, why don't you just pick up the book and find out? You can normally get the AWA Upshot books fairly cheaply because they are pretty thin. They're just a nice fun read. They do a lot of horror stuff with AWA. I think one of my choices last year was from them too. They've got all sorts of horror stuff in there. They seem to predominantly do horror titles. And they're often self-contained. And some of it's kind of universe-length stuff, and some of it's just very, very self-contained. So give them a look.
All right. My numero 5. I'm getting out of the DC and Marvel this time. I had a few publishers this week that I was going to dip and dabble in, but I'm going to save them for a couple future episodes we have. I wanted to spread it out a bit. But this was on pick of mine. On one of our incoming, I forget which month it was. Tenement, Jeff Lemire, Andrea Sorrentino. I mentioned them in the New 52 episode for their Green Arrow work. But this is a really, really strong story. 10 issues. It's good character stuff. It's a proper monster horror story, haunted house type of situation where you've got... I'd like to show like the artwork in this. For me, I just think it's spellbinding. Like there's just some really cool
is that an
design
in-story
stuff
page or is that the
that's an in-story page. I'm gonna take a moment to like. There's a lot of really. This is a not an in story. I think this is an in story page
Oh.
as well. Like these are just sort of graphics to get you intrigued, but the paneling and the texture. 7 people living in an apartment building that apparently is haunted, and all these characters are intertwined. It's one of those stories where everyone lives in the building
Yeah.
and they're not directly connected, but they're intertwined enough to either be pleasant passerbys, the irritating neighbor, whatever the case may be, and how all of their relationships sort of where they begin and where they end. Even the way the issues are laid out, every floor is like level. As you count down to the end of the book, you're getting closer to the bottom of the building, and every floor is someone else's sort of nightmare. How do you weave through this? Who do you know that's alive? Who do you know that's an agent of the dark force? As we're, what is the whole point of us going through this haunted apartment that we're trapped in right now? And people aren't safe. Like, it's not that everybody gets out unscathed without spoiling anything. Something must be given to the god in order for me to get the power, sort of tale. But it's got a serious element to it. It's a very, very strong book. And the artwork, again, as you saw, there's layers to it. It was kind of like the feeling you get with the J.H. Williams III art, where the paneling is an image, but it's part of the narrative.
Uh-huh.
You get what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
They got that kind of stuff in this, which
Okay.
I'm a big fan of. Yeah, so I know I mentioned them a lot lately by happenstance, but this book is perfect for what we're talking
It
about
sounds
today.
it. That's
Yeah.
Mate Trunks was saying, isn't Tenement the third part of a longer series? Because it's Bone Orchard Mythos, isn't it? Which is a series of books.
It is.
Can they be
And
read
thank
individually?
you for, I don't know. Thank you for bringing that up, because I wasn't sure how this fits into the Blood Archer,
I don't know.
Bone Archer.
Bone
It's
Orchard?
on the title, Bone Archer Mythos.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what part comes first or set, like what the read order is. I just knew there's 10 issues here that tell a complete story, but this was creepy as hell. And if there's something that I'm missing out on, it kind of makes sense, but
Right.
it still holds up. Because there was parts where I'm like, am I supposed to know something about what they're confronting? Or for me, reading it without that knowledge kind of made me scared. They are tenuously linked, as is Gideon Falls. Okay. So it's like you can, or you could, or you don't have to.
Yeah. Probably like Sin
Like,
City.
okay.
You don't need to read all of Sin City,
Right.
but you can read. If you do, you get a bigger understanding. But if you don't, you get stories.
Yeah.
I was going to say good
That's what
stories
this-
for
that's
Sin
what
City,
this-
but I'm not going to.
That's what this felt like.
I just wanted to mention, Omega Bread said in the chat that in terms of AWA Upshot, he's also read Hotel, which is spelt with a double L because it's done with the lights blinked out on the front, so it says Hell. That's also worth the read, which is an anthology series about a cursed hotel serving as the setting for various different tales. And Year Zero, which I think is the one that's kind of got spin-off books. It's about a zombie outbreak and how it's dealt with differently around the world. So that's really appealed to me. I think they did a version. Did they do a version of that which was a load of them collected? Or was I might be thinking of a different title. But yeah, there's some interesting stuff from AWA, and if you like dark stories or horror stories, there's plenty to choose from there.
Nice. Good call. Well, I hope everybody had a good time with us tonight. And if there's something that you've been inspired to read that has been on the shelf, you want to reread again, or something new, came to the right place. And there's those reading orders for a couple of these books that we talked about today, which is really cool. Maybe we'll get an Inferno one somewhere down the road.
Oh, we so will.
Oh, yeah. Nice. All right. Optimus, thanks for coming out. I threw
Thanks
my
very
cape over
much,
there on my
like,
quarterback.
mate.
Thank you, everybody, for listening and hanging out with us. All the people that are on the live on Twitch, everybody that was with us on YouTube this week, we really appreciate it. We hope you have a safe October, whatever you're doing. Stay warm and have a good book to read. Right?
That's
Omniversecomics.guide. That's where you go.
right.
All your
Omniverse.
comic book goodness.
Roll out.
Roll out.